Have you ever heard the saying that millionaires don't use astrology, but billionaires do? Well, actually, astrology, just as other energetic tools, is becoming a prominent tool for business. And in this episode, together with my former client, Julijana, who was a participant of Radiance last year, we are exploring this intersection of business and astrology. Julijana is an astrologer, also with a master's degree in psychology and a very long analytical background in the corporate world. And in this episode, she's going to share with you the tools you can use to enhance your business, as well as run it in a way that just feels good on the soul. You are listening to Soul Business Alchemy, the podcast for conscious entrepreneurs, quantum creators, and new wave leaders. Hosted by me, Riya. This is where energy meets strategy and business becomes effortless, magnetic, and wildly profitable. Welcome to Soul Business Alchemy, Julijana. Thank you so much for answering the invitation. And today we are going to talk about astrology in business, and more specifically about the subject of timing in business, which is very much linked to the celestial bodies. And just to start with, we have not met here on a random date, right? You've selected the date when we were putting. Yes. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yes, thank you, Ria. It's such an honor and so excited to be here talking to you. And you're absolutely right. When you asked me to schedule, you sent me your calendar. And as an astrologer, I never just pick any random date, especially not for a conversation like this that I know is going to be published and there's going to be more people listening to it. So yes, I did do some work and I did do some selected. I did my astrology work and yeah, here we are. But you also had your input. I gave you a couple of options because I do feel like we have to be malleable and you kind of had your input. So here we are.
Yeah, I've chosen a date which is also very good from the Chinese astrology perspective. So Juliana is trained in Western astrology, but I kind of don't know that much about Western astrology because I've followed always the Eastern astrology. And this date and this timing is a convergence of the two. So we are here and we're here to talk about timing. And what I want to start with is a little bit more of a general view. How does astrology today serve modern business people?
Oh, that's such a great question. Well, the way that I see it, the modern world doesn't necessarily have a room for something like a divine or astrological timing. We're all on some kind of deadlines. Business is about being linear, growth, moving forward. You launch a project, you scale it, you grow it. But if you look around you, nothing in nature is really linear. There's nothing grows in a straight line and it follows seasons, certain, not necessarily even monthly or annual. Sometimes, different plants, different animals have their own timing in how they live, how they reproduce. So astrology is to me like a complementary to like modern business, because I think all of us that are in business, that function in this world, sort of are bound in certain ways by that linearity, if you will. But introducing astrology as an element gives more, to use the word of your school, more soulful element to how you do business, because you're not just looking at linear things, because nothing in astrology, at least the one that I practice, is linear. There's
Circular, right? Everything is
all, yep, circular, and those circles don't even happen necessarily at the same time. Some are longer, some planets take longer, some are faster, like the moon, for example. So following the transits of the planets gives us like a different perspective. So some people are actually pretty triggered by it, because when you are trying to grow in a linear way and you have an astrologer tell you, well, actually, this is not a good time for a launch, or this is not a good time for this, it's better for this. People don't really like to hear that. So there's that element. But the way that I practice astrology is more having the individual connect their own, I call it blueprint, soul blueprint, which is imprinted at the time of your birth. Understanding that and understanding how your business, whether it be you're working for yourself or you're working for someone else or you're working on a creative project, seeing how that particular element fits into your own personal blueprint. And I think that's where the magic sort of happens.
Okay.
When you're not just belonging to the business or the plans, but it's sort of, you see how they belong to you as well,
So
if that makes sense.
yeah, so it's basic is a more organic way of running your business, in essence.
Absolutely. Yep. Instead of chasing certain agendas and things and plans, it's more like aligning, attuning to something, to a resonance that's already there for you to achieve, to reach, or tune into.
So you use the word align, and I know you use words with purpose. And I want to actually dive into this subject of the difference between using astrology to align with energy versus predict, because people sometimes think that, and I know that you are not a big fan of predictive astrology. You feel like I think from what I remember when we worked together inside Radiance, you always almost felt allergic to this predictive version of astrology as being like a shallow version. Whereas I feel like what you practice is more about how to align yourself with energy rather than predict energy. Is that correct? So what's the difference, and how do we use astrology to align more than to predict? Because I think that some people don't even know that you can use astrology this way.
Yes, which is sort of crazy to me, but you're absolutely right. And I love this question even more. I think my approach to astrology comes from a place of, I will use the word patriarchy. I know it's overused, but it comes from a place of opposing that patriarchal um, way of thinking, where you need somebody outside of you, like a guru, like a psychic, like an astrologer, like a tarot reader, you name it, or a priest, to come and tell you what the truth is, to tell you how to be or what to align with. I see astrology, and I don't like, if you come to me, you're absolutely right. You know me so well. If you come to me and you tell me to tell you with some certainty, can I? Yes. And there's actually time and place for everything. Sometimes there's ways in which you're being asked, and it has all to do with how I'm attuned with my business, how a person asks me something. If it's just to perform, for example, just tell me a date, I would never do that. But if I can genuinely feel that there's a pull, that person believes I can help them unlock something, that I hold a key to something, yes, I will definitely give that key if it feels aligned with the situation. So it's not like one grand rule that I follow. But if I were to say generally how I work, is absolutely, to me, it's greater to help someone, have them align with their timing, because they are on their own time. All of us are on our own time. We were born in a certain time, at a certain spot, with a certain alignment. And the birth chart is like a code sheet. And as you go through life, those codes get activated. So when you have a transit, the big thing is about predictions is seeing a transit. It's like anyone can pick up an ephemeris, which is the positions of the planets, and kind of learn the positions and kind of know that something is going to happen here. But knowing what truly is going to happen, really the key, the true person that holds the key, is the person, like you, the individual. And in my work, I don't like when people outsource their own power. I like to unlock it for them. I want to give them that key back, and I do it in a way to hopefully give them something that resonates so they know, oh, this is something I've always known. Something, because you do know. There's nothing I can tell you that you don't already on some level already know. So that's how I see my work more as helping people align versus me like just having, yes, I do have a lot of books, but that doesn't mean that I know more about you and your life than you do.
So it's about helping people remember. And I love that you touch on the subject of the human factor versus the, let's say, the sky factor. Because in Eastern astrology, they always say, the old Chinese masters say that there is like three elements: heaven, earth, and man, or woman, human. Obviously, again, rooted in patriarchy. So basically, there is the heaven, which is the astrological movement. There is the earth, which is the energy of Gaia and landforms and feng shui. And then the human factor is how it connects to personal birth chart and also personal choices. So it's almost like, yes, we can predict the potentials, but you as a human decide how to fulfill those potentials, or whether you even going to fulfill those potentials. And obviously, timing is a big thing. But you have touched upon the subject of astrology giving the modern business person a more organic way of doing business. So it's not so much forced. It's not this kind of hustle and grind old paradigm where you feel like you have to push and meet deadlines. And I understand that to a degree, we still need some structure in business. No matter what business it is, there needs to be some structure. And I actually, living in Costa Rica, where there's almost no structure and no timing, when things just happen when they happen. Like I ordered my desk in May, it was meant to be ready in June, and it came ready in September because that was when, as they say, when God is willing, things things align. But so I live and I can see how businesses are run when there is no structure, and it's very difficult for a structured Western mind. But at the same time, you talk about this organic way of aligning, and you're trying to almost find this golden middle where we use astrology as an element to make the business more organic. But my question is, do you think that when we do this organic attunement, it gives a modern business person an edge over people who are not using astrology in a way that perhaps things that maybe would be, if you're not aligned with this energy, maybe they would be more challenging, or maybe they would be more like, everything has to be forced with a willpower. And that astrological energies, do you find that is like giving you the wind in your sails kind of thing?
So that's a great question. And I think that absolutely does. But not in the way that someone would think it does. For example, yes, we can look at the transits, we can look at what is happening in the sky to initiate certain things. Like, we decided the date when this is going to conversation is going to happen. But it's more from, I feel like it helps people with astrology, helps them see the impact that their business can have. Because what happens to me, the way that I work is, so I have the person that has the chart. So we look at your chart and your circumstances and what you are creating and how you're evolving in this life. And then you have your business. And your business is its own entity. And that entity has also a birthday.
I was actually going to ask you this question. I know you ha- I, you would check your email because I sent some questions ahead. You haven't opened the email, and I know it. This was actually a question I had. Do you think that a business has its own birth chart? And
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yep. That's exactly how I look at the business. It's when you create a business, this is you are either a midwife or a doula of something else that now has a life of its own. And with astrology, you cannot just look at the transits and how that business is impacting or how you're impacting the business, but you can look at it as its own entity with its own birthday, and you can see how with the transit, how that business is going to grow, what kind of impact it's likely to have, which planetary influences does it have, and there's like a lot you can define by looking at the business as its own entity.
So
For
in
sure.
order to find a business's birth chart, you would have to remember when exactly it was launched. It was probably most.
Yeah, and this is where we're big on the birth chart. I always go like it's super important, obviously, for a person like, how sure are you that this is like your birth time? And then when we're talking about a business, um, we do look at, yes, we have to decide, first of all, what are we calling the birthday of the business? So is that, that can be when you went and filed your business license, for example. You look at the date and the time and the place where you did that. Or if you incorporated, when did you incorporate? If a company went public, for example, we look at the date and the time and place when it went public. And then you can look at the business as an entity, and you can see, just like in any person, whether the eclipses or the transits, the same things you look for a person, you can see for a business. Yep.
This is
With the interesting, yeah,
very much, in line with my own way of looking at businesses having their own energetic field. As you know, what my that's how the way I look at the business, because it has got its own energy. And I also have seen Eastern astrologers take the same stance. I remember one famous Chinese metaphysics master analyzing the success of Apple as a company, and they launch at some super auspicious time. It was almost like the success was written in the stars, and they huge. So I yes, and here's the question: so if someone is about to launch the business for the first time, would it be prudent to actually choose the birthday?
absolutely. Absolutely. I will always say that to people. If you are creating something, there is a branch of astrology in Western astrology that's called electional astrology, um, which basically it does that. It kind of looks at the best time to initiate a project, anything. Mostly it's not part of the services I do. I do it as a sort of part of the things I do for my clients. But if you really wanted to, there was like a super huge project, I would refer you to an electional astrologer that's going to analyze kind of like I said, look at your chart, look at the transit, and look at what exactly are you launching. Most of the time, people will go for big events like, when to get married, when to go on a trip, but something like when to launch your business, especially even if you have your business launched, if you are launching a product and there's a big campaign, there's something you've been working on for a while, going to an astrologer to help you pick the best time is the most wise thing you can do for your business.
I agree, because that's what I've been doing since 2017. For every time I hold a live event, it's not a random date. And every time I start a promotional window for or enrollment for any of my big programs, such as Transcendent Dimensions or Radiant, is not on a random date. The date is not selected with a calendar in mind. It's selected by a Chinese astrologer. So I I feel like obviously the Western astrology can do exactly the same. And I'm kind of like, this is like the best investment. I pay for every date, and it's an investment in business. Of course, I could just take my calendar and it's like, okay, this is how the campaign works. And sometimes, unfortunately, the best day will happen on a weekend, that's another weekend. And I'm like, well, it's okay. I'm gonna do it. So I am like 100% on board with that. And I must say, the first time it happened, actually, I was still running a very, I would say, down to earth 3D business, nothing to do with spirituality. And my ex business partner actually interviewed for a podcast a Chinese metaphysics master. And this was my whole segue into astrology. And I remember that podcast in Poland was very controversial because people were like, what are you doing? You've got a business podcast. You're inviting someone who's into woo. Bearing in mind that's like 2017. So different time, different kind of like mentality. I think we have moved on a little bit since then. And I remember we like, why don't we give it a go? And it was coming to Black Friday. And now I'm not doing Black Friday. You know, my business kind of runs on its own schedule. I don't, it doesn't feel right for the type of business I run to do Black Friday promotion. But I remember at 2017, we like, she selected as a date and she selected as an activation because in kind of Chinese metaphysics, there's also activations. You put like elements and water. And we were just looking at the sales skyrocketing. We've done something like 5 months worth of turnover within about 5 days. And since then, I never doubted it. I always invest in that. So guys, especially if you about to launch a business or launch a product, consult an astrologer.
Yeah, definitely listen to Riya on this one.
Yeah, I kind of live by this. It's not something that I'm kind of recommending, but obviously that's just one aspect of what astrology can do in business on a timing.
Yeah.
How else do you work with business people apart from selecting a good date? What's the other ways that what you do enhances, let's say, your entrepreneur clients' life and business decision?
Yeah, I love that story. Thank you for sharing that. And just to add something to what you said before I answer your question, it's sometimes an astrologer will give you a time, like it's in the middle of the night. And this is really funny, but sometimes that has happened to me too. It's like, oh, this is like a really good, juicy time. But you really can't launch in the middle of the night, or there's like, it's just not the right time. But sometimes it's about the symbolism, like a symbolic. Do something that's meaningful in that time that will signify somehow the beginning, either of the launch or the business. So it doesn't have to, you don't have to necessarily schedule the call or the event, but maybe you can write it up and post it at that time. So there's like a different ways you can work with it. There's like a lot of flexibility.
So you basically initiated, and here, Western and Chinese astrology are exactly on the same page. It's like the energy of when you initiate, when you make that first step, is what matters. And like you say, sometimes it's symbolic. So it's always about making that first step. I don't know, send an email or something that doesn't really, it doesn't even have to be the very thing, but anything when it's like a new project, that when that first step happens, almost like that energy carries throughout the project, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That first initiation, the kickoff is the most important thing. So, absolutely. I need to learn more about Chinese metaphysics. It's so fascinating. But apparently, it's the same stuff, like, right?
It leads us to the same kind of conclusions, but it's just
A different way.
different lanes for the same constellations.
Yeah.
But I feel like in principle is on the same page. The principles are very, 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 very similar. But going back to the question about
Yeah.
else apart from selecting a date, does astrology enhance a business person?
Yeah. This is a great question and one that I think about a lot. For me, the best tools are ones that people can easily implement into their lives. So, yes, you can definitely pay for an election, which is important, but I always think about, I love simplifying astrology in ways in which is digestible, where I don't have to explain to you what that really means, but it's a quick tool that you can consider. If you come to me as a friend, for example, when do I send this email? There are definitely just a couple of quick techniques that I use. One of the favorite ones that I have is looking at the moon, the movements of the moon. There is, I don't know if this is in Chinese metaphysics at all, but there is a phenomenon, we can call it, I guess, called void of course moon, which is tracking the movements of the moon. So the moon takes about 28 days to go through the zodiac signs. It stays in one zodiac sign about 2 to 2.5 days. And while it's in that one little pie of the sky in that particular sign, it makes connections, like I call them like high fives to the other planets. And in Western astrology, we look at the moon as the messenger, as the transmitter of the cosmic energies. So we look at the moon. What is the moon doing at a particular time? That's a big part of the electional astrology piece, the condition of the moon, what sign it's in, what kind of aspects does it make. But on a very basic level, it's very easy to track so when the moon is done making those high fives with other planets, there is a bit of a moment, like it can be like anywhere from like few minutes to even 24 hours, where she doesn't make any connections, any aspects, exact aspects to other planets. And we call that period, there's different definitions of that, but the one that I use basically can last between a few minutes to 24 hours, and it's called void of course. So the moon is basically not making any aspects. It happens kind of randomly. It's not it's not easy to predict, but it is something you can easily create. Like I have actually created a calendar for my clients where you can import it into your Outlook, into your Google calendar, and quickly see when that void of course window is. And void of course, you can use it multiple ways. The number one is if you have an important email to send to someone and you really want it to be well received, if I see it's void of course, I'm not sending it. I'm going to wait. Like it's usually not that long of a wait. I'll wait and then I'll send it. Or if you have some bad news to deliver to someone and you are kind of worried about the impact this is going to have, if you send it during a void of course moon, chances are it might have zero impact because it's void of course. You'll say it, but it'll have like no impact.
You know what? This is really interesting. I need to actually check this because there is something in Chinese metaphysics called death and emptiness.
I wonder if it's the same.
Sure, it's the same principle. I would be really curious to see if those dates align because it's the exact same thing. And when you look at the Chinese Tongshu calendar, which is exactly the kind of like the calendar you've created, it's possibly where the calendar says that this is only good for prayers and worshiping. So do your spiritual activities.
Yes. Yep.
Literally no action.
Exactly. And that's what the void of course spoon is. It's basically to go inward, to meditate, to take it easy, to let things. And if you are someone who is attuned to the energies, you actually, once you start seeing these periods, you will feel it without even looking at the calendar. Sometimes I'll be like, I wonder if the moon is void. And sure enough, she is. It's almost like you have no energy. You don't even feel like, personally, at least how I feel. They vary, so it's not always the same way. Like obviously, it's not just one and done, but most of the time I can just tell there's like, I don't think, and it's in modern business, you would be taught, no, push, do it, send the email, even like push against, it doesn't matter, you need to do it. But seeing that actually there's a reason behind possibly why you don't feel like sending it now, or maybe you will be kind of guided to send something just because it's meant to not have that impact. So yeah, that's a very simple tool, for example, that I love using. And I have it on my calendar. And if I'm typing, sometimes I'll see it coming up and I have an important email. I will hurry up. I'm like, I better set this before the moon is void.
How interesting. And this is a great example of something that's not even dependent on your birth chart. It's more same for everybody. So are there any other planetary cycles or any other kind of like, movements of energy which are not connected to a personal birth chart? So let's say someone is not really that knowledgeable when it comes to their own birth chart. They don't know how to read it or whatever. Obviously, it's a good idea to learn how to do it or go to someone who can do it for you. But let's say day to day, you are not really going to be analyzing every intricacy of your birth chart. Is there any simple ways, apart from this, any other simple ways where someone can look at the greater planetary movements, the global cycles, let's say, to make the best decision? And I will ask you later on about the Mercury retrograde that we all talk about, but let's put this one on one side. Let's talk about other ones.
So the answer is yes. If you ask me, different astrologers might give you different answers. For me, there's a couple of, I don't have that many black and white rules, but there's a couple. The void, of course, is one of them. The other one is eclipses. I am not a fan of initiating anything around eclipses. I feel like an eclipse is like, think of it, it's like a roller coaster, and you have no choice but to get on that roller coaster and just try to not freak out as much as possible and enjoy it as much as possible, because those are times when, uh, in my experience and in astrology, what the tradition teaches is more fated, events that are more fated, where the universe sort of intervenes. Like all of these plans that we have, things that we plan, how we plan them. Personally, I always recommend not to initiate and start things on an eclipse if you can help it. Now, as it makes sense, a lot of things do happen around eclipse. It's just how it is. A lot of things tend to end during eclipses, so major beginnings happen on eclipses, but it's usually not something where humans have a lot of control over.
Always felt like that intuitively, that it's like where it's the time where the bigger forces at play, where our delicate human constitution is not a match for this higher forces. So like you say, it's more fated, and you're just kind of gonna be like a little boat going against this great storm, and let's see if you're gonna reach the dry land on the other side. And it's kind of like it's like bigger forces are at play than what
Yes.
can I mean, control is maybe a bad word, but yeah, well, we can control. So eclipses, chill out. Anything.
Yes, definitely chill out during eclipses. And I'm just thinking more in things that are easy to people to hear about. Um, the other one that's pretty big, that I like to kind of follow is, um, I know you're going to ask me about retrogrades, but actually, when the planets are stationary, especially stationary, which, yes, Mercury is the biggest one because that's the one that goes retrograde most often, goes retrograde 3 times a year. So that's why it's become, I feel like, so popular, aside from the fact that Mercury is just a planet associated with the god of communication and travel, and it's just activities in general. Um, but also, depending on the type of activity, there's, for example, when Venus is retrograde, I wouldn't get major things to do with Venus, which is beautifying, cutting your hair in a different way, coloring it a different color, or um, maybe starting or ending relationships around when Venus is retrograde. It is very common that if something happens during a retrograde period, it will come back. So if you don't want things to kind of boomerang back, maybe reconsider doing something while a planet is retrograde. Or if you do start something during retrograde, just know that that's probably going to be the first of many times you have to revisit a topic.
So talking about retrogrades, what's your actual view on this popular subject of Mercury retrograde? Is it really to be that feared, or are there, perhaps you mentioned Venus retrograde, are there other kind of planetary retrogrades that are more, let's say, ominous than actually this infamous Mercury retrograde, something that we need to pay more attention to? Or is Mercury the most impactful in business being, communication, all these devices, things like that?
So the way that I would answer that is you should only look at stations, and this is has to do actually with eclipses as well. Stationary planets, you should only look at them as very significant if they are in some way aspecting your natal chart. So speaking about personal charts or even your business chart. So that's why when I do readings for my clients ahead of the year, there's different ways to assess which planets are going to be more um, important to you. So to kind of shortly answer the Mercury retrograde, I personally love that people get so riled up about Mercury retrograde, but I do think it gets into that territory where they're not talking about it from an alignment place, but it's more of a freak out place where, oh my gosh, something's happening and I have zero control. That's the part that kind of bothers me. But if you really want to tune in and see which retrogrades, which planets stationing are important to you, you need to see at what degree is exactly they are stationing when they are. And do you have a personal planet personally that's at that degree, either by a conjunction, a square, or opposition? Um, that's when I see the most of the impact. And there's different, uh, basically charts you would have to look at, like your natal chart, also your solar return chart for that particular year, to see whether the planet that station is going to make an impact. If, for example, you have an eclipse or a planet stationing on your birthday, that's definitely going to be more significant to you than maybe your partner who doesn't have any planets on that particular spot. And we're looking at the personal planets in your chart, as well as that we call those the main axis, like your ascendant, your descendant, your IC, and your MC, which are the most private part of your chart and the most visible part of your chart. If you see a planet that's stationing on those degrees, you can almost guarantee there's going to be a bigger impact for you personally. Or if we're speaking about a business, we can see that your business is in some way going to get activated by that event.
Perfect. So basically, bottom line, it's very personal. So don't get stressed out. Don't jump on the bandwagon. Just check your chart, and then you can draw a precise conclusion, because astrology is a very analytical, precise art. And I know that your kind of background is very analytical. And I find that astrologers, people think of astrology as something very like fluid and woo, but in essence, you just analysts. If this episode activated something in you and you're ready to build real momentum, Soul Business School is where this work goes way deeper and becomes your reality. It's my business expansion membership for soul-led entrepreneurs who want to scale with strategy and energetics without burning out or forcing what no longer fits. Inside, you'll get access to monthly live momentum coaching calls, high-level business trainings, real-time energetic recalibrations, as well as a private community of multidimensional entrepreneurs who simply get it. This is not a course, it's not a copy-paste formula, it's your space to grow in alignment, in community, and in momentum, month after month. You find the link in the show notes, or you can visit rialovegard.com to step into the field.
I like to say that astrology is the oldest data science. So personally, funny enough, my corporate career is in data and analytics. And so it would have it that also I am an astrologer, but I look at astrology, it's all about the data. It's if you look at Western astrology, all it is those people, astronomers who were astronomers and mathematicians back in the day who were taking note of the position of the planet in relation to other planets and the Earth and notating it and starting to see the cycles. And then to layer that, they would say, well, when this planet was at this degree and with this planet, the king died. So they would start kind of layering the significations of what that means. So all that is, when you just look at it that way, it's just data science and analysis.
I feel like when I look at the role that people who are either astrologers or psychics or people who basically see beyond the physical into metaphysical have as a role for other business people who perhaps are in very down to earth businesses, which can also follow this new era paradigm, is we become like those court astrologers, in the olden days, or court wizards or witches, where there was people who were, let's say, a king or a queen in today's ages, like a CEO or some kind of business owner. And we are called to advise and to see what they don't see from the basically from the physical, and to in a way give them a bit of an edge, the bit of an kind of like a different perspective. Uh, do you ever see yourself like that, like a kind of like a divisor?
Oh, absolutely. That's exactly how I look at myself and my astrology business, as a sort of advisor, a strategist. I like to call myself a strategist too, because when a client comes to me with a specific thing that either they're trying to build something, or they're trying to move, or they're trying to merge either with another being or another business, there's usually, you can see it in the chart. You can kind of see where that urge is coming from. There's an astrologer, that famous astrologer says, if it's in your heart, it's in your chart. So I have never to date like have a person come to me with a question and then looking at the chart and I'm like, I wonder why they're thinking about this. I can usually say, oh, it makes perfect sense why they're coming to me about this particular thing. Look at all that thing going on right now. So yes, absolutely. It's like giving a perspective and giving a plan around that perspective, because the nice thing about astrology is that the transits are finite, meaning you can see when they exactly start, when they culminate, and when they start dissipating. So I can give people the peace of mind or the perspective. If something either they're trying to launch and it's just not going, I can tell them, well, with the help of the stars, well, it looks like maybe it's just the timing, and this is when it might start. It's better to start kind of materializing. Or if something is going on and I can see why. Usually that's the nice thing about it. Sometimes it does take some asking questions to see how that planet, because not every planet interacts in the same way with every person. Like we all have a different quality of that planet in our chart embedded in our energy. But I can usually see, oh, I can see this happening is tied to this particular transit, and I can track it and tell them how that transit, like the dates, when it's gonna go away or it's going to get intensified and such. So yeah, absolutely. It's all about using data that exists out there that somehow relates to you. And almost never, and this is what I love about astrology, I almost never tell people something that don't already innately feel, but it almost kind of puts them at ease. And that's the whole alignment piece that comes in, that I feel, yes, I'm a strategist, but at the same time, I help people through that align somehow to know that actually the path they're on, there is an absolute reason why they're on that path.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So lastly, I just want to ask, what is the best way for our listeners and viewers to get in touch with you? And basically, how do you currently work? Because I know as we worked through radios, your business was evolving. I know you started offering one-to-one sessions. Do you still offer them? Or are you more working in like a more kind of long form, or both? How is it that you can help our listeners today?
So the best way to reach me is through my website, which is astrowit.blog. I do have some social media presence, but it's hit or miss still. It's because the nature of my work is so personal, as you know. So I still have a evolving relationship with social media. But the way that I love to work is the same way that I do my astrology, how I approach astrology, which is in order to help someone align really takes not a guru, like not someone you can go and just get a question answered, but more I do see it as a sort of evolving thing. So my favorite way of working is, and this is how I have my current offerings created, is to have, yes, absolutely, if you just need to have an hour to discuss your planets, I do have a couple of options for that. Like I call them readings, but I do have a one-on-one um, uh, openings working with clients that need, because none of what I do or what I advise people to do is just solving it in one fell swoop. You do need more support, and that's how I have it structured. People can basically book me to work one-on-one with me on as the and this is like how I've created a lot of the current coaches in business is about, oh, you have to work with me basically for 6 months. And while that would be nice, I don't think that's realistic. I keep it very flexible, very malleable, where there is a space that we've created we can work, and you get to choose when you can come and work with me or not. So I keep it open.
That's the essence of soul business, isn't it? It's just the things are done on your terms, not on rigid structures, and in somehow in conjunction, in cooperation with the needs of your clients. So that's a wonderful testimony of just how your business runs. But thank you so much for taking us on this journey, showing us how the planetary movements can impact our business and how we can actually work with these energies instead of these energies. We're going to link up to your website and all the other places that people can find you in the notes and in the descriptions. So check out Julijana's work and don't hesitate to reach out to her if you want to have an astrologer in your code, and not just an astrologer, but a strategist.
Yes. Thank you, Ria. Thank you for inviting me. I absolutely enjoyed it.
And so did I. Thank you so much, Julijana. And for our listeners, see you on the next episode of Soul Business Alchemy. Thank you so much for tuning in.